It seems like every day another small craft business announces that it's closing down. In this episode, I'm looking at the causes of this super sad phenomenon, and I'm trying to answer the question, what can we do to both support small businesses and buy less new stuff for the sake of our planet? Stick around a couple of minutes and we'll get into it. Welcome to Check Your Thread, the podcast that will help you sew more sustainably. My name's Zoe and I'm obsessed with sewing. I've been blogging about it for over 16 years and I'm the creator and host of the popular handmade wardrobe challenge Me Made May. But, like many people, I've become increasingly concerned about the climate crisis and I'm looking at the way that my lifestyle contributes to it. So in this podcast, I'll be nerding out about making clothes whilst exploring how to minimise the negative impacts that it may have. I really hope you'll join me in this journey. Hello, lovely listener. How is it going? So this is the first episode of Check Your Thread to be released under a Labour government. So this isn't the BBC. I don't have to feign neutrality. I am over the moon that the Tories are finally out. I wish I could be more excited about Labour coming to power, however, because I'm pretty gutted about how much the party swung to the right and abandoned so many important principles. I'm gutted that they won't properly fund the NHS and reverse the privatisation that's happening. I'm gutted that they won't pay public sector workers what they deserve. I'm gutted that they won't back a ceasefire in Gaza. And I'm gutted for a number of other reasons. Anyway, out of the two major parties, Labour definitely had the best manifesto in terms of promises related to the environment and climate change. So let's hold them to that. And I'm thrilled that the Green Party made some really positive gains. They got 3 additional seats. There are now 4 Green MPs in Parliament, which is no mean feat with the first past the post electoral system. Anyway, as many wise people keep saying, now the real work begins. Thanks so much to everyone who's been in contact about the last 2 episodes, the one with Green Living and money coach Laura Aldaney, and last week's conversation with textiles activist Shams Eldin-Rogers. It was so good to hear about the various parts of both conversations that have resonated with you. I love getting your feedback and continuing these conversations. Some of you have been sharing lovely ways in which you engage in alternative economies. Avara_upcycling on Instagram shared that they were discussing the themes of the podcast episode with Laura with their mother-in-law whilst their mother-in-law was cutting their hair, and they then paid her with a jar of pesto. I love that. I myself have been engaging in an ongoing exchange with my neighbour. She's a vet and she's kindly been keeping an eye on my cat Dave, who's got a wound on his face that is taking time to heal. In exchange, I've made them some cookies and I'm about to mend a pair of her jeans that are starting to thin in the thigh area. Plus, there's been some fantastic comments on Instagram on the topic of values-based spending that I was discussing with Shams. Last week, I raised the question, what items do you spend more on because they align with your values better than the cheaper alternative? Lots of people shared that, like me, they often go out of their way to get various products as refills to avoid plastic packaging. And Lisa and Norma both shared that they buy organic fruit and veg because it aligns with their values. Thanks so much, everyone, for contributing to these discussions. And whilst I'm in the business of thanking people, I want to say thanks to Clancy and Emily for signing up to support the podcast via Patreon over the last week. There has actually been a number of patrons cancelling their support recently. I really want to thank those individuals for the support that they have given, and I hope that they continue to listen to and enjoy the podcast each week. I don't know everyone's reasons for cancelling, of course, but I can only assume that some, at least, did so in response to the very reasons that I outline in today's episode, which is the cost of essential living expenses going up with wages remaining stagnant and therefore a lack of discretionary income. Spoiler alert, one of the main reasons that small businesses are closing. And this podcast is a small business too. It employs me to investigate how we can sew and live more sustainably and then to deliver that info in a hopefully entertaining and inspiring way. So if you feel you are able to do so, please help me continue with this podcast micro business. You can sign up to the Check Your Thread Patreon for any amount at all. A popular amount is the cost of a cup of coffee each month. The link to the Check Your Thread Patreon is in the description in your podcast app right now and on the website checkyourthread.com. So let's get cracking with today's episode. It is the final part of the Finances, Sewing and Sustainability mini-series. I feel that there are discussions to be had around questioning consumption and consumerism, but also supporting the small businesses we love and value. I don't think these discussions are being had widely and openly in the sewing community, or at least not widely enough. We've got to start addressing them so we can move forward. So let's see what happens after this episode drops. So until next week, please take care of yourself, do some more of that self-care that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and enjoy. Yep, No Small Business on a Dead Planet is a deliberately provocative episode title. I want it to be clear from the outset that this episode is not about fun ideas for scrap projects. This is full-on, unashamedly political. If you don't want to hear such an episode, or you don't want to hear such an episode right now, fair enough. But I'm not apologising for talking about capitalism, consumption and the climate crisis. So in this episode, I'm addressing the topic of how we can support small independent businesses whilst also reducing our consumption of new products. Small businesses are a vital and exciting part of the sewing community and society more broadly, and they are currently closing down at a faster rate than we've previously seen. But we are also currently experiencing a climate emergency, and we are all responsible for making changes to try and address it. One essential act to help our planet is reducing the amount of resources we consume and the damage that's caused by the production, shipping and eventual disposal of all the stuff that we buy. Which leads to the question, are the people who are reducing their consumption to blame for the closures of these businesses? If not, what is to blame? And what can we do to both support small businesses and buy less new stuff for the sake of our planet? So I'll start the episode by explaining why small businesses, sewing and craft businesses in particular, are important and why they must be supported. Next, I'll lay out the actual threats they're facing and the reasons why we're seeing so many of them closing their physical or virtual doors. And lastly, I'll make my suggestions for how we can both support small independent businesses whilst also reducing our consumption of new products. So that's what you can expect from this episode. It's a topic that we've brushed up against or lightly touched upon in a number of previous episodes. But it's become clear to me that this podcast and the conscious sewing community more broadly need to look at it head on. So I'm excited to open up the discussion and throw my own tuppenny worth in and to find out what other people have to say on the matter. So what made it clear to me that this needs addressing directly were a couple of comments that I received or read elsewhere on social media that were related to the Last Sewist Standing challenge. So to recap, Last Sewist Standing is a challenge to see how long you can go without making sewing related purchases. People usually sign up to participate when they're feeling overwhelmed by the amount of fabric and other sewing items that they've got. You can listen to episode 118 with the challenge's creator Lisa Bauer for the full explanation of what that challenge is about. Currently, in 2024, the challenge is in its fourth year and there were approximately 240 participants signed up when it started in February. These comments that I'm talking about were suggesting that participants of Last Sewist Standing pausing their fabric buying were, at least in part, responsible for the many small sewing businesses closing down lately. Now, I know that these commenters are coming from a good place. They're people that are saddened by the many recent closures. But I believe this suggested causation is super misguided, and we really need to unpack it. So it's high time we face the thorny topic that these comments were actually shining a light on, and that is how, or even if, we can reduce our consumption whilst also supporting small businesses. So let's crack on. So to start, I really want to express how sad I am that so many independent craft businesses have been closing their doors over the last few years. One of my early sewing employers was forced to close their doors about a year or so ago, which was really upsetting to hear about. So yes, I am also heartbroken to see small business after small business shut down, both physical businesses and online ones. And it's gutting to think about the impact that has had on owners and any employees they had. And as an employee of a small independent craft business myself currently, I'm also a bit scared. It's like I really do get it. And I'm guessing that I'm preaching to the choir here, but when I'm travelling or I'm in a new town, there is literally nothing more exciting to me than coming across like a cute little craft or sewing shop. More often than not, it's going to have lovely, friendly staff and a really nice selection of curated products. And even those sewing shops that you still find occasionally that have been owned by the same person for 40 years and they have some stock dating back almost as long, those are such treasures also. So in short, I love small craft businesses. I'm going to be using the terms small business and independent business interchangeably in this episode, but whatever you call them, let's acknowledge their value and function within the sewing community and more broadly. So firstly, independent businesses do so much more to support their local communities and economies than big box or chain businesses. Speaking on a purely financial level, according to Forbes.com, local businesses are estimated to circulate 3 times the money back into their local economies than bigger chain businesses. The website shoplocaluk.org shared a recent government study that shows that for every £10 spent locally, £3.85 is recirculated within the local economy. Small businesses do not extract a huge percentage of their income out of the local economy and shove it upwards to their wealthy investors and shareholders. Keeping our local businesses up and running means that through the rates that they pay, they can generate revenue to support local council services like schools and parks and roads and libraries and many other services that make our community a better place to live. If the business owner shuts up shop and is forced to get a job with a bigger company, that's less investment for local amenities. Small businesses also infuse much more than just economic value. They create quality, actually interesting, non-soul-crushing jobs for people. It's why I'm still working at Fabric Godmother after nearly 6 years, which is almost 3 times as long as anywhere else I've worked. Independent businesses often sponsor or host local events that bring people together. Online-based craft companies often do the same for the online making community. You may have seen them do this when they support or create challenges and events, and that creates opportunities for makers to connect with one another. When small businesses have bricks and mortar premises, they always bring their own distinct flavour and character to a town or a neighbourhood, which is what I was saying about loving nothing more than discovering independent craft shops when I go somewhere new. Their presence can make the place more desirable for visitors and shoppers, which of course benefits the locality more broadly. And what is also super cool about small businesses is that they have the ability to be agile and innovative and get creative. If you've worked at or with a big corporate company, you'll know how glacial the speed of change can be within them. For us customers, it means that small businesses are more likely to respond to our needs, like ordering something in for us if they don't have it in stock. You can make suggestions to a small business, such as swapping out their plastic packaging or something, and a small business could potentially make that change the very next month when they place their next packaging order. Make the same suggestion to a giant company, you're looking at huge amounts of time and layers of red tape, and that means that your suggestion is going to be very unlikely to be acted upon. The big chain places also have to keep their product offerings pretty bland because they have to cater to a very wide range of tastes. Independent places can often deliver a more unique, specific or quirky selection, which helps promote diversity and innovation. Plus, and I cannot stress this point enough, independent businesses know more about the products that they sell. Have you ever asked a member of staff a question at a big box craft store? Possibly about a product suitability or a project you need guidance with, if you can actually find someone to ask, that is. Unless you've totally lucked out and found the one employee who actually knows their onions, your question will often be met with a blank or confused look. Ask the same question at a small independent shop, or email the customer service person at an independent online shop, and they'll often go out of their way to help and advise. I know that for sure because I've witnessed my colleagues at Fabric Godmother respond to all manner of obscure and niche questions to the best of their ability. And bringing the climate crisis into this, local businesses often have a smaller carbon footprint. They often source goods more locally and are responsible for less transportation emissions. And since they're smaller, they consume fewer resources and produce less waste. So yes, we love small craft businesses for all these reasons and more. And in some respects, they're the lifeblood of the sewing community. So when they start to die off, we all feel the effects. So why are they dying off? Is it really because 240 individuals spread across the globe are trying to sew only from their stash for a bit? As much as I love the Last Sewist Standing challenge and will always back it whenever possible, I really don't think we can credit it with that much power. And following the same logic, you could argue that this podcast is forcing small businesses under by my repeated encouragement to reduce the consumption of virgin resources. Again, perhaps sadly, I don't think I'm that powerful. I admit I'm being a bit facetious because the comments have got my back up a bit. Obviously, I have no way of knowing if the commenters were really being serious or they were just throwing out half-formed thoughts that if they were questioned on them, they wouldn't really stand by. And either way, I'm guessing that their heart is in the right place because they're sad and scared for the small businesses that they care about. So what is happening to these businesses and why are we seeing all these announcements about craft shops going under? I mean, it's always been tricky and risky starting a small business, but why are so many failing right now? Well, it is in no small part due to the cost of living crisis. So that's a phrase that is talked about a lot, or at least it was last year when the press and media got hold of it, but they've since seemed to drop it, even though nothing has really improved since then. So for clarity, let's define what the cost of living crisis actually is. According to fuelgenie.co.uk, it's the rising cost of bare necessities whilst earnings stay stagnant. This means that less money is available for non-essential purchases. And I'd also like to add that there's less money for essential purposes as well. And in many heartbreaking cases, people are having to choose whether or not they want to have the heating on or feed their family. So the price of non-negotiable living expenses, including food, utility bills, rent or mortgage payments, fuel and public transport have all been going up. Plus, we've recently seen the highest rate of inflation since 2013, and wages are largely staying the same. This all results in a decline in real income for many people. So small businesses are losing out on sales because most of their customers are really feeling the pinch. People are having to reduce or forgo discretionary spending as a result of having less money to spend. And many of those same rising costs that are affecting their customers will also be affecting the business itself, such as rises in rent, utilities, fuel, and other costs that come with running a business. Larger retailers with a wider network of stores can absorb dips in profit more easily before the situation becomes critical. Many small businesses are fighting for their lives because they just can't compete with economies of scale. Large retailers and e-commerce giants like Amazon sell high volumes of products, which allows them to negotiate lower prices with suppliers. In addition, they often have multiple locations and spend a lot on advertising, increasing customer awareness and convenience. All of this creates a highly competitive environment for small businesses. And when potential customers are feeling strapped for cash, as many are now, they'll obviously be looking to spend less on each item. The article I read on Forbes.com also pointed out that all businesses, small or large, need working capital. This might be used to buy extra inventory and get lower prices, or to pay for advertising, or to pay for staff to extend their opening hours, or to offer multiple locations. Large businesses have substantial financial reserves and robust credit standings, which allow them to better navigate market fluctuations. Small businesses frequently struggle to obtain the capital they need compared to larger businesses. Banks often consider small businesses more risky due to limited financial documentation and inconsistent cash flows, making it challenging to demonstrate creditworthiness compared to larger companies. Additionally, traditional banks are not set up to finance or service small businesses that carry a higher risk profile. Traditional banks are inherently risk-averse, so their strategies, processes and capacity to support smaller businesses are limited. All of this results in small businesses having to work harder to find specialty lenders that understand their business and are more willing to make unsecured loans to support future business growth. And yet another issue is digitalisation. Small businesses often struggle to establish an online presence due to lacking resources and the necessary expertise to market themselves effectively. As you know, small business owners often have to wear many hats. And even if they do happen to have a marketing background, they'll be limited in time because they're also doing literally everything else. So now we've heard about the many difficulties that small businesses are facing. So what typically do they do as a result of facing these difficulties? Well, it's all the stuff that our beloved small craft businesses have been engaging in, either behind closed doors or out in the open. It's incredibly likely that the small businesses now are having to delay hiring staff or even laying off staff. I can think of numerous closing down announcements where the owner has described not being able to pay themselves, or at least pay themselves regularly for quite some time. They often offer discounts and promotions, perhaps more frequently or with deeper discounts than during better times, and we've definitely seen that. And small business owners might turn to remote working, which can lead to the closing of bricks and mortar shops if they have one. They may then instead hire a cheaper non-retail space to house their stock, or even have to start operating their online business from their own home. So yeah, it's really tough times for small craft businesses. It's also really, really tough times for the climate and the biodiversity on our planet. So those commenters who were voicing their concerns about Last Sewist Standing, what they were doing, albeit somewhat misguidedly, was highlighting a dichotomy. How can we reduce our consumption of virgin materials whilst also supporting small businesses, their owners and staff? Is that even possible? Yeah, as questions go, it's a biggie. It's something that I think about all the time. Maybe you do too. It's absolutely something we need to try and figure out, both collectively and individually. Because sadly, dismantling capitalism doesn't seem to be on the cards in the foreseeable future. And honestly, I'm not sure that conscious capitalism or ethical capitalism or whatever you want to call it has any real answers either, because fundamentally it still relies on creating a profit. Our governments are doing little to nothing to really address the cost of living crisis. Plus, they continue to make life very easy for big business. For example, in 2020, during which time most of the world was in lockdown, making people rely on online shopping so heavily, Amazon had a sales income of 44 billion euros in Europe, which is 38 billion pounds. But they paid no corporation tax because of some taxation loophole. What the actual shit? So yeah, there's little help from up top to fix this issue or offer any solutions. And the question remains, how can we support small businesses without contributing to the overconsumption of finite resources, the production of waste and damage to our planet? I mean, I'm not sure, but I know that we can't continue to consume resources at the rate that we currently are. There will be no business of any size on a dead planet. It really does come down to that. I read a fantastic Substack article this week by Gina Ferrari, and Gina has given me permission to quote from it. Gina writes, "All over the world, we are witnessing extreme weather events, such as devastating floods, wildfires, excessive temperatures, and melting glaciers and ice caps with an ever-increasing frequency. Yet most of us still all carry on as though this is not happening. I totally understand that the problem can feel so overwhelming that it creates a desire to hide away and pretend it's not happening. And when we see huge corporations or whole countries adding to the problem, it's easy to believe that anything we might do is only a drop in the ocean and a waste of time. But I don't think we can continue to bury our heads in the sand, because we have to believe that every little thing we do as individuals will make a difference, and we all have a responsibility to reduce our consumption in whatever way is possible for us. This is everybody's problem, and everybody needs to be part of the solution." Yes, Gina! So what can we do? How can we even begin to support the small businesses that matter to us, but also take significant steps to combat the climate crisis? I believe that the answers lie in asking ourselves some important questions. What are we buying? How much are we buying? And where are we buying it? Obviously, these same considerations go for every aspect of life, but we're going to look at it through the lens of sewing. So what are you buying? What fibres? What materials? Are you buying something you truly love that chimes with your personal style and will fit into the reality of your lifestyle? Something that will feel good next to your skin, something you will actually sew up and be excited to wear for years to come and want to mend when necessary? Are you buying the right fabric for your project so it won't end up as a fail? Are you, when possible, choosing natural fibres that don't contribute to the problem of microplastics in our waterways and in our bodies? And fibres that will someday biodegrade in the ground rather than stay on this planet in some form for basically ever. How much of these things are you buying? Are you buying the amount you actually need, or buying extra just in case, or because it's on sale, and maybe you'll want to make something else with it someday with no actual plan or idea what that might be? Are you buying something that's very similar to something else that's already in your stash, but you can't remember where you put it? Are you buying something even though your fabric or yarn cupboard is already full? And sub-question, why are you buying it? Are you buying because you got swept away in the buzz and promotion hype? Or because you were feeling sad or bad or stressed and it gave you a temporary lift? Or because it genuinely sings to you, or will likely fill a gap in your wardrobe that you've identified? And then, where are you buying it? When you do need a piece of fabric or pattern or haberdashery item, don't buy it from a big box store or from fricking Amazon. There is nothing that you can find there that isn't available to buy from an independent small business with just a tiny bit more digging. Yes, it might be a little bit more expensive for all the reasons explained previously. And if it's being posted to you, that extra cost will probably be because you're paying for shipping. And yes, it might take an extra day or two to reach you. But unless you really can't afford to pay a little bit more for that item, or you literally can't wait an extra couple of days to receive it for some reason, then just don't buy it from the biggies. If you're buying online, find an independent online store rather than turning to Amazon or AliExpress or wherever. Or if you want to buy something in a bricks and mortar store and there's an independent one within reasonable physical range who will likely stock the thing, then don't head to Hobbycraft or Joann's. To re-emphasise, I'm not talking to those who are on a very tight budget or those who really need the thing the very next day. I'm just saying, please buy the thing you need from a small business if you can. If you don't shop from small businesses whenever possible, even if it's slightly less convenient, then you can't bemoan the death of small independent businesses. You literally can't have it both ways. So aside from buying what we actually need in the quantities we actually need them in from the small business, what else can we do to support them? Well, we can use our voices and our platforms, be that in real life sewing community or online via social media. Personal recommendations mean so much. We must talk about and help promote our favourite independent sewing businesses. So when someone else wants to buy something that they actually need in the actual quantities that they actually need it in, they will think to see if the small business has it. Remember, the mega retailers have enormous budgets to spend on advertising and promotion, so they're in people's faces and brains already when the time comes to make a purchase. Therefore, we need to band together to help out the small businesses to get their name out there beyond the reach that they already have. Also, find out what other products and services they offer. You might be able to get involved and support them in a way that doesn't involve the consumption of stuff you don't need. Many small businesses offer sewing and craft classes, whether they have premises that are open to the public or not. Have you always fancied learning how to draft your own patterns? Or is there a certain aspect of sewing that you'd like to master? So see what local sewing businesses are offering by way of skills expansion. Or do they offer social sewing sessions that you could attend? Do they have a scissor sharpening service? Or do they also offer sewing machine repairs and servicing? And remember, small businesses are far more flexible than giant ones. So if there's a class or an event or a service that you'd like that your local small sewing business isn't currently offering, then make a polite suggestion or inquiry. It might be that they can accommodate and roll it out. Your suggestion might be something that they were considering anyhow, and your comment has galvanised them into launching it. And here's one more thing. It feels more abstract, but it has the potential to have the greatest impact. We can vote. No, we can't dismantle capitalism anytime soon. However, we can see what group of people currently vying for power have our best interests at heart. So find out which of your local candidates support the taxation of larger multinational companies and want to create subsidies that make life easier for small businesses. But actually really, because supporting small businesses is a line that is spun by basically every political party at the moment. But without the taxation of the giants, there really is no support for small business because the playing field is so phenomenally unlevel. So there you go. I'm going to leave that there for today. I hope that this episode will trigger further thought and discussion. It's probably going to bring up a lot for some people and I'm going to get a bunch of emails and messages. I am, as always, very welcoming of your thoughts and comments on this topic. Just please keep your communications polite. You can find me via email, zoe@checkyourthread.com, or on Instagram @checkyourthread. Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode and are left feeling inspired. For more info about the podcast, including show notes for this and every episode, head to checkyourthread.com. I'd love to hear from you, so if you have any comments, questions or ideas for future episodes, please get in touch by emailing zoe@checkyourthread.com or find me on Instagram @checkyourthread. Massive thanks to Patrick Potter for production support, to Sylvia Seller for the awesome logo design, and to Simon at Palm Skin Productions for the music. This ad-free podcast would not be possible without listener support, so if you feel you are able, please consider signing up to the Check Your Thread Patreon. For the equivalent of buying me a coffee each month, you'll be making it possible to continue producing regular episodes. Links can be found in the show notes and on the website checkyourthread.com. I hope you'll listen again next week. Until then, take care. Bye!